Already. Everybody's already making with the jokes. I love it. Everybody's already coming through, making good funnies in the chat. There's only like 2 comments so far, but I already appreciate the jokes with some of them. So thank you to everybody who's already making me chuckle here on a Wednesday night for this week's Panther-Lair Show. Look, something that's not funny in this world is illness, and our good friend Jim Hammett is under the weather for this evening. So Jim won't be joining us here in a few minutes or the next 60 minutes or 59 minutes or however long we decide to stretch this thing out or however soon we decide to cut it short. But nevertheless, Jim won't be with us tonight. It's just me. It's like the old days. We're partying like it's 2019 again. I think we started doing this in 2019. I wonder if I could, now is not the time to go look this up, but I wonder if I could figure out when we first started doing weekly live shows. I mean, it was a long time ago. I'm just going to, as I talk, I'm just going to keep scrolling until I get to a point where it's not Jim showing up. Signing day live streams 3 years ago. Jim was not participating with us. Looks like some of these are the Panther-Lair Show on November 9th, 2020. What day of the week that was. So, I mean, at least 3 years ago, almost, coming up on 4 years, I guess we've been doing this. So anyway, this is partying like it's the old days again. And it's just me talking Pitt sports with you about, I mean, we can't avoid it, guys. We have to talk about Pitt basketball, Where's my Pitt basketball sheet of not disinformation, disappointing information? Is this it? I wrote it all down. Oh, wait. Is it on the back of this? Yes. Yes. Below this thing at the top, which is all the receiving, rushing, touchdown production they lost. Ignore that. Everything else is how bad Pitt basketball has been in the last 2 games. You see how I circled 99 there at the top? That's how many points they've scored in the last 2 games. That's the second lowest 2-game total scoring under Jeff Capel. In 2019, back-to-back games, also against Clemson and Virginia, as a matter of fact. Isn't time a flat circle around here. But at the end of the 2019 season, 2018-19, Capel's first year, they lost to Clemson and only scored 48 points. And the next game, they lost to Virginia and only scored 49 for a 2-game total of 97, which is the lowest 2-game total of the Jeff Capel era. And so by comparison, I mean, the last 2 games here where they've scored 99, it's an offensive outburst. Pretty bad. There was also a point at the end of the 2021-22 season where they scored 100 in back-to-back, like 2-game total of 100. They scored 54 against Notre Dame and then 46 in a loss to Boston College in the ACC tournament. As bad as this is right now, I think I can't say that it serves any purpose, but I do sometimes remind myself that as bad as it is right now for Pitt basketball, and it's downright awful. I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, this team is bad. They don't really do anything very well. They are 9-14 overall. They're 2-8 in the ACC. As bad as it is right now, I would still maintain, I mean, it's certainly not worse than the second Kevin Stallings year. And I might say it's not worse than the 2021-22 team, because that was some bad basketball. I mean, they were really bad that year. They had 2 games under 50 points, although this year's team has matched that with 2 games under 50 points. This year's team actually has a 47-point game. That year's team had a 46-point game. That team was bad. That 2021-22 team. It's no credit to anyone if you are better than that group. They scored under. So I was looking at consecutive games under 60 because they've scored, under 60 in the last 2. They scored 52 against Clemson and then 47 at Virginia. You go back to that 2000. That's the only time they've scored under 60 in back-to-back games this season. That 2021-22 team did it 5 times. They had 5 separate stretches of consecutive games scoring less than 60 points. They actually, at one point, to end the season, they scored under 60 in 3 consecutive games. So it's bad right now. There's no question about it. It's bad right now. It's ugly. It's disappointing. but it's not the worst. It's still really bad. Yeah, it's really bad. And there's not a lot that there's not a lot positive that you could isolate or hold on to or hang your hat on. There was a actually the first comment here. We'll actually just bring this one up. Marlon Barnes Truther says, to me, it feels like Jeff Capel is back for another year. From the current roster, who would you want to keep? Well, you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings and say not him. So I guess we'll say we'll try to be positive and talk about the guys that you would want Pitt to hold on to. Even though the reality is, like, by not mentioning other guys, we're clearly saying you don't want Pitt to have them. Like, top of the list, Roman Cialepa. Like, Roman is the number one guy. You got to bring him back. You want to have him back. He looks, I can't say great, but by comparison to any of his teammates, he looks great. He's been their best player for the past dozen games. He's been their best player in ACC play. Actually, did some statting with that. Where's my Roman stats here? Roman has double figures in 8 of Pitt's 10 ACC games and 10 of the last 12 games overall. In the last 12 games, he's averaging 13 points and 7.3 rebounds per game. He's shooting 51% from the floor. He's Pitt's second leading scorer in ACC games, averaging 11.7 points per game. He's the leading rebounder in ACC games with 8.1 rebounds per game. He had a quiet night against Virginia with 8 and 3. That's what he did against Louisville also. But other than that, he has been really, really good since before ACC play. You could go back to the Binghamton game. He had the huge breakout game against Penn State when he scored 28 or whatever it was. But it's just night after night. And I know last night he wasn't great, but nobody was great last night. And he's still like that role play they tried to run way too many times. It worked a couple times and got close to working a couple times. But the athleticism he showed to catch these passes that were thrown about 4 feet above his head, like his athleticism, his toughness, his developing touch and ability to finish, his rebounding. There's so much to like about Roman Cialepa and his future as a basketball player. I think as he continues to develop his defense, probably first and foremost, and then just his kind of feel for the game. It's still, this will be one of the broadcast team talking points all season long for the rest of this year. They'll talk about how this is his first year playing basketball exclusively, and they'll bring it up again next year. I mean, look, we never stopped hearing about Levon Kendall being named after Levon Helm. You know what I mean? We never stopped hearing about Levon Kendall being able to, or Sam Young being able to play the piano. You know what I mean? Like some of these things, we never stopped hearing about how Will Jeffers was 13 when he was a freshman at Pitt or wherever, 17 or however, 16 or something like that. Like some of these things we will never stop hearing about. And we'll never stop hearing about Roman being a top rugby player who's playing basketball full time for the first time. So we'll continue to hear that. But there is some truth to it as well. And that's why it feels like every night is a learning experience for him. And most of these nights, particularly in ACC play, he has improved and developed and gotten better as the season has gone on. So he's the number one guy at the top of the list that you want to hold on to. After him, this is not alcohol. I just need a drink of water. What was the question? Look, I think Omari Witherspoon can be good. Like Noyes Indricitis has sort of quietly become Pitt's best 3-point shooter in ACC games. I think Brandon Cummings. Can be a really good player. I think Brandon Cummings might be Pitt's best pure scorer. I think Brandon Cummings might be Pitt's best overall shooter. I think he is one of the few guys who is willing and able to at least attempt to create his own shot. And he's a little more effective at it than Noyes Indricitis is, who's the only other guy who seems willing and able to attempt to create his own shot. I like a lot about Brandon Cummings' game. I just wonder if he might be better served playing in a different kind of system and the type of team that supports his style a little bit better. And I'm not sure what style of player this Pitt system supports best. But I just don't know if it's a guy like Brandon Cummings. I don't know if the ACC is the right place for him. I don't know if Pitt's the right place for him. I like him a lot. I think he's a good kid. I think he's a good basketball player. Again, I think he might be their best pure scorer and best pure shooter. But I just don't know. Chances are Brandon Cummings finishes this season as Pitt's leading scorer and, probably their best three-point shooter or, near the top of the list of their three-point shooters. And then, looks for a raise as one would get after such a season and maybe prices himself out of what Pitt can kind of allot to returning players. So like to have him back. I don't know if I don't know if that's going to happen or not. In terms of other guys that you would definitely want to, I like the potential for Kieran Mullen. It shouldn't cost much to keep him. I think, maybe something can develop there. I think I like the potential Makari Moore. Maybe something you could, you can't just like ship everyone out, you know what I mean? And just keep roaming. You need guys to fill out the roster. You need guys to practice. You need guys to play. You need a bench. You need depth. So it's not like everybody can go. But if I'm prioritizing, if there's guys that I want to, definitely bring back and if not be the foundation or nucleus, guys to kind of build around. Roman, Omari, probably Kieran Mullen and Makari Moore. I guess Noyes Indricitis, you'd like to have him grow and, grow here and maybe he can get a little more consistent with his shot and a little more effective with his shot creation. But this team is just so limited offensively that it's hard to sit back and say, oh, you got to keep this guy, and this guy, because they're just not doing much for this team right now because nobody's really doing much for this team right now outside of Roman Cialepa. So long-winded answer there, Marlon Barnes-Truther, and probably didn't even answer it. Chaggy says it's difficult to think about joining the weekly live show when Deshaun Jackson and Papa Conti are hurt and Cam Corden's playing out of position. I can't look, I will say, so Monday, ACC coaches teleconference, they do this every week. And no, I might have deleted. I almost want to bring it up and just kind of read through the answer. I know you probably already read it and you might have already seen it either on Panther-Lair.com or when I talked about it earlier this week of kind of breaking this down. But on the ACC coaches teleconference on Monday, I asked Jeff Capel a question. That was the first question. And I said, here, I'll just read it to you. Question. We've talked about free throws and layups and things like that. You're coming off a game where you scored 16 points in the first half at Clemson. Did you come into this season anticipating that this team would maybe struggle to score or not be your most prolific offensive team? And where do you think some of the shortcomings have come this season? Capel. Well, I didn't come into the season thinking that because I thought we'd have a whole roster. And so I thought my team would be very different. Our team changed drastically in September with the injury of the situation with Deshaun Jackson. So that totally changed the dynamic of our team. And then as we've gone on, the injury to Papa Conti changed our team as well. And he goes on and talks about passing and being able to beat guys one-on-one and things like that. But to take Pitt's overall offensive struggles this season and boil it down to Deshaun Jackson and Papa Conti not playing, like, that's not the reason Pitt shot 2 of 18 from 3 in the first half against Clemson. That's not the reason Pitt only scored, 47 points at Virginia. That's not the reason Pitt only scored 52 points at Clemson. That's not the reason they only scored 16 points in the first half at Clemson. It's not the reason they had their lowest scoring half of the season in that Clemson game because they don't have Deshaun Jackson. I think Deshaun Jackson and Papa Conti probably could have helped a little bit last night just with the rebounding. It felt like Pitt got out rebounded by $1 billion. They actually ended up getting out rebounded by 7, which is considerably less than $1 billion. And Pitt won the rebounding battle in the second half. It felt like Pitt gave up roughly 6,423 offensive rebounds. They actually only gave up 13, but it felt like much more. It was just absolute domination in terms of size from Virginia. And Deshaun Jackson, while I think there are a lot of flaws and issues and problems with this team that he would not have solved, he at least could have neutralized the size a little bit. And instead of losing by 20 and only scoring 47, maybe they would have lost by 11 and scored 56. I can't get behind the idea that Deshaun Jackson's medical situation and Papa Conte's injury are the reason this team is as bad as it is offensively. They are, by some measure, the worst offensive team in the ACC. Least effective, lowest scoring, worst shooting. They can't make free throws. They don't shoot threes very well. They don't score. And Deshaun Jackson, I don't think he changes that all that much. If anything, as many people have pointed out, and I mentioned it too the other day on the Morning Pit, if Deshaun Jackson's biggest impact on this team, if he was on the team, might be that him being on the court would mean more minutes for Cam Corrin at the 4, which would mean Roman Cialepa gets squeezed out of minutes. So you take the one good thing happening for this team, the one thing that's actually like a positive, if you want to find a bright spot on this whole sordid mess, it's Roman Cialepa. And if you actually had Deshaun Jackson, you would not even have that bright spot. So you might, instead of 9-14, maybe you'd be 8-13. Instead of 2-8, maybe you'd be 3-7 or 4-6 or something like that. But you still would have lost to Virginia. You still would have lost at Clemson. You still would have gotten crushed by Louisville. Like, some of these things would have happened no matter what, even if you had Deshaun Jackson. And not only that, you'd be losing, and you wouldn't have Roman Cialepa giving people something to feel good about, whatever small amount of solace and positivity you might take from Roman Cialepa's play. So, like, what do the kids say? What's that phrase? Miss me with the Deshaun Jackson talk. Miss me with it. I don't even know if I use that appropriately. Swim Boyd says, why can't we just be bad? Why do we have to be bad? That game last night, like, others can vouch for this. I sent a text to a couple friends. I sent a text to two different groups of people last night. Well, one to a group of people, one to a friend on the side. And I said, in all seriousness, should they just forfeit the second half? It's such a hopeless feeling when you watch a game that's going the way last night's went. And, like, I know they got beat by 41 against Louisville. I know they've had some other bad losses. I know they've had some losses where they weren't close. I know they've had some bad games, some bad performances. But that game in the first half last night, it was over. It was over. After that brief little spurt they had in the first 3 minutes when they took what are they up, 7-3? After that, it was over. And despite all of those bad losses and blowout losses and games where they looked like they didn't belong, like, last night was maybe the biggest mismatch and the worst matchup that I've seen for this team all season. It was a game where they just looked like they were not going to have a chance to compete, that you could play that game 100 times and they would lose 100 times. They couldn't do anything offensively. And their defense, like, I kind of see where, like, Jim Boeheim and those guys were talking about, Pitt's playing pretty well defensively, and they only gave up 67 points, like, that's fine. You hold a team under 70, you did a pretty decent job. But even then, even the defense, I didn't think was that good. I mean, Virginia took 31 threes. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. They probably shouldn't take 31 threes in a game, but they were passing so well, so quickly. Pitt's heads, collectively on defense, Pitt's head, let me say the best way to say this. Pitt's collective head on defense was spinning because of how well Virginia was passing, how well Virginia was playing, how the ball was moving. And they kept getting open threes. That's why they took 31. They only made 11, but they took 31 because they had all these open looks because they moved the ball so well. And when they wanted to drive on Pitt, they were able to drive. When they wanted to pull up and shoot, they pulled up and shot. They, had 30 points in the paint. They got 13 second chance points. I'm just looking kind of down the stats. They had 18 fast break points. It was anything Virginia wanted. And it's remarkable to me that they scored less than 70 because I thought they were just executing that well on offense, and Pitt's defense had no answer. None. And it was a game that, rebounding was a mismatch. Defense was a mismatch. Virginia ended up with 6 blocks. They had 12 steals. They had 18 assists on their 26 baskets. I mean, Virginia did everything right. And Pitt had no answer whatsoever. There was nothing Pitt could do against Virginia. And, that's disheartening. It's hard to watch a game like that. It's hard to watch a game that's such a mismatch. You're just like, there's no chance. They cannot win this game. They're not going to. And there was a spot where, what they get it down to? I feel like they had it down to 14. They have it down to 12 at one point, I think. Yeah, 49-37. They had it down to 12 after Cam Corrin made 2 free throws. And what happened? After Pitt got it down to 12 with 9:23 left to go in the game, Virginia made 2 3-pointers in the next 2 minutes. And it was completely over. It was an 18-point game again. Less than 2 minutes, and it was an 18-point game. I want to see what Pitt did in that stretch after they cut it to 12. They cut it to 12. They cut it to 12 on free throws, and Virginia committed a shot clock violation. Total opportunity here for Pitt to take control of the game, and they get a turnover from Amari Witherspoon. And Virginia makes a 3. Down at the other end, Barry Dunning misses a jump shot. Virginia makes a 3. And it's out of reach. In a matter of less than 2 minutes, Virginia had completely put the game away. And Pitt cut it to 14 on a Noyes Indricitis 3. Made it 14 again on a DeMarco Minor 3. But there was just nothing, got it to 14 on a Roman Cialepa 3. But now it's 2 minutes left to go in the game. Just no chance. And that's hard to watch. It's hard. I mean, I'll be there on Saturday. Oh, no, I won't. Jim will be there on Saturday as long as he's feeling better. Hopefully he is. But it's tough. Oof McGee says, I don't know how a D1 team manages to miss threes as bad as we do. Almost every miss is an air ball or hits the side of the backboard. It has, the last 2 games, Clemson and Virginia, it has been remarkable how they have missed 3-pointers. Not just that they've missed them, but how they have missed them. Because there have been some unbelievably bad shots that, like you said, they might hit the backboard if they're lucky. They might. They're not touching the rim. They have some that touch the rim, but they have a whole bunch that just miss the backboard. Or miss the rim and hit the backboard, or some that just straight up airball. They were 6 of 19 from 3 at Virginia. They were 5 of 26 at Clemson. So that's 21 misses at Clemson and another 13 misses last night. So 34 missed threes over the last 2 games. What's that add up to? 6 of 19 and 5 of 26. So 11 of 45 from 3 in the last 2 games. There are shots that I'm like you see some of these shots go up and clang off, not the rim, but the backboard, if they even touch something. And you're like, have you picked up a basketball before? Are you allowed to shoot from way out here? I'm not sure if you are. Biba Prodsfer, I don't even know what that says. Ask the question, do you think with the recruiting class we have, if Jeff Capel leaves, will they go as well? I mean, probably. That's usually what happens. There is an out for guys who sign to go somewhere else if the coach leaves or gets fired or whatever. So yeah, if that's the fate, if that's what happens here in 2 months or a month and a half or whatever it is, then yeah, I would think you would probably expect most of that recruiting class to ship out as well. But there's a lot that's got to happen between now and then for that to happen. Garrett Sherwin says, do you get the impression that Jeff Capel's future for next year is already decided one way or another? I mean, like, we get this question all the time about Jeff Capel and next season and what's going to happen. And, is Capel, and I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if they're going to fire Jeff Capel. I don't know if he's going to resign. I don't know if he's going to leave to become the next president of Enron. I don't know what's going to happen next season. If I had to put money down right now, I'd put a very, very small amount on him coming back. But as I've often said, I say that with the caveat that I tend to lean toward the status quo. Not necessarily prefer it, but just sort of assume that not much is going to happen or not much is going to change. So I lean that way. Do I think it's already decided one way or another? No, I mean, I think things could always change. But my guess is they'll probably be back. Chevy Troutman says having one person on a basketball roster shooting 75% or better from the free throw line is remarkable. Not sure how that's even possible. Yeah, it's amazing how bad this team is at, like, it's just indicative of the fact that they're bad with everything offensively. I mean, really. If you go down the free throw shooting, you got Kieran Mullen. He's made 3 of 3. So good day. DeMarco Minor. No, wait, Kieran Mullen's not the Australian. Wait, I always get my Australians mixed up. No, Kieran Mullen's the Canadian. Henry Cody Lau is the other Australian. Anyway, DeMarco Minor is shooting 90.2%, 37 of 41 from the free throw line. Makari Moore, 3 of 4. So you got that. Barry Dunning Jr. is 74.5%. Brandon Cummings, 71.8%. Everybody else is under 70%. Witherspoon, 65%. Corrin, 63%. Noyes, 55%. Roman, 49%. And Papaconti was 44%. I don't know how Noyes Indrisitis can shoot almost 37% from 3 and under 60% from, the free throw line. And kind of the same thing with, Cam Corrin a little bit. Shoots 63% from the free throw line, 36% from 3. He's actually only made 9 3-pointers this season, Cam Corrin. I felt like it was more. Rich Campsey says, if Noyes Indrisitis could consistently shoot, he would be my number 1. I think you're talking about guys you would want to bring back. I still think even if Noyes was scoring and shooting consistently, I still think Roman would be my number 1 guy to bring back. But yeah, it would be more appealing to bring Noyes back than it currently is. Rich also says, if I'm Jeff Capel, I'm not sure we have time to wait for Roman Cialepa to develop. I mean, I think it's happening right now. I mean, he's developing into a useful player. He's been a useful player for the past dozen games. He's still got his flaws for sure, but this isn't a case where he's averaging, 4 and 2 over the past, or 4 and 5 or something over the past 4 points and 5 rebounds over the past 12 games. I mean, he's averaging, 12, 13 points and 7 or 8 rebounds per game over the last 12 games. So there is still growth. There is still development. There are still points where he looks like a freshman playing basketball full time for the first time, but he still, had 3 double-doubles in a row. He's still averaging like a really impressive amount. So I can't, it's development and it takes time, but it's also happening in real time. And he's playing as one of Pitt's best players, arguably their best player, as he continues to develop. Rich says DeMarco Minor and Cam Corrin are the only ones without any more eligibility, correct? I mean, who has eligibility? What is eligibility anymore? I mean, in terms of, I guess, yes. Deshaun Jackson, I'm going through Pitt's roster right now. Deshaun Jackson is listed as a 5th-year senior. Cam Corrin's a senior. DeMarco Minor's a 5th-year senior. Barry Dunning is listed as a senior. So maybe him as well. I forget if he somehow has some reason to get an extra year. Who can keep track of eligibility anymore? Let's see. Not going to talk about whether Jeff Capel plays white players enough because no. I mean, because no, I'm not going to have that conversation. Not because the answer to that question is obviously no. I'm just not going to have that conversation. Willett Harris says he's going to the game on Saturday because he needs to pick up his size large hockey jersey, even though he needs a 2XL. Yeah, they are giving away Pitt hockey jerseys to the first 5,000 fans in the door. So everybody should get one. Oof McGee says, what happened to Barry Dunning's confidence? They were able to keep the first Clemson game and the Miami game close when he was shooting and driving consistently. Yeah, Barry Dunning has fallen off a little bit the last two games. He had a really slow start to the season. 4 games, he only scored 11 points. But then he got 23 against Bucknell and then went for double figures in 14 out of the next 17 games. And in that 17 games, he was averaging 14 points, 6 rebounds. He shot 51%. He was shooting 35.5% from 3. But in the last 2 games, he's cooled off a bit. Scored 5 points at Clemson, shot 2 of 7 in that game. He had 2 points at Virginia. He shot 1 of 5. In the ACC games this season, he's averaging 10 points per game and shooting 21% from 3. He actually hasn't made a 3 in the last 2 games. The last time he made a 3 was the Wake Forest game when he shot 1 of 7. And he's had, I think, 5 out of the 10 ACC games, he hasn't made a 3. So I don't know if his confidence has slipped. I know that was a big thing they had to bring back was his confidence. I know Jeff Capel talked about that, and announcers clearly talk about that a lot, that his confidence slipped after not really making it at the high major level, going back to South Alabama and kind of having success again, and then heading back to the high major level. And his confidence was maybe down a bit at the beginning of the season. I mean, if you remember the first 4 games, I mean, he just didn't exist. And in the exhibition games too, like, the Providence game, the exhibition game, and then the first 4 games of the regular season, like 6 games, he just was a non-factor, non-existent. It was a ghost. It was like, wait, Barry Dunning was supposed to be their big, high-scoring offseason addition, and he's not here. He disappeared. But then he got into a groove and he got into a rhythm. He was scoring really well up until these last 2 games, and he has just disappeared. He also he's put up points in these ACC games up until these last 2, but I don't feel like he's always done a whole lot of consequence. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't always feel like he makes a big shot when they need a big shot. He's made some big shots. But I don't know. I don't feel like he's made the kind of impact he needs to make and the kind of impact they need him to make. So if that's a confidence issue, I couldn't say, but it's definitely the numbers have slipped for sure in ACC play and certainly in the last 2 games. Oak Original says it's not unrealistic to think a couple players jump into the portal voluntarily and the rest of the team is pushed out. How many of the current roster end up playing at any other P6 program and who? I'm guessing 3 players stay P6. Well, I mean, you're going to, are you counting, like guys who stay at Pitt as players who would end up on a P6 roster? Because if you are, I mean, I think you get a handful there. You could probably get a handful more, a couple more who end up at a power conference school, a high major school. I don't know. It's hard. Yeah. I mean, they're going to lose transfers, guys who choose to go, guys who are, it's suggested that you go, and guys who you don't even need to say it overtly. You say, well, here's the money you can get. And that'll tell the story, So guys there'll be plenty of roster spots available. Let's just say it that way. Oof McGee says, we deserve to storm the court if we beat SMU or Duke. I might storm if the Duke game is within 20 points. The thing is, though, if Pitt fans were to storm the court after a game in the current situation, would anybody know? Like, how would you know that the court was being stormed? How would you know that wasn't just people walking out, leaving the game? Willat Harris says, when does baseball season start? Baseball season, Pitt's first scheduled game is February 13th against Western Michigan in Florida. I think I saw the Panthers were picked last or next to last in the preseason ACC baseball poll, so not good. Marlon Barnes Truther says the Pitt football newcomers are something bright in the Pitt fan base. Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice touch. We finally got to talk to some of these guys, talk to some of the newcomers today, actually. We talked to the freshman defensive lineman. We talked to the transfer defensive tackles, and we talked to Corey Sanders today, Pitt's new defensive coordinator, who's been on the staff for the last 8 years, but he just took over as defensive coordinator this season. Really, I guess he was named after the bowl game, since Randy Bates announced his retirement the day before the bowl game. Corey Sanders was announced as getting promoted to defensive coordinator after the day after the bowl game. So we got a chance to talk to them. Actually, if you check out, well, you shouldn't look at it right now because you should be watching the live show. But later you can check out, we have a video of Corey Sanders' interview here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We have an article about Corey Sanders here over at Panther-Lair.com. We also have a video here of the freshmen, Lincoln Hoke, Reston Lehman, and Joshua Pittman. Pittman's a big dude. Pittman's like 235. He played as like an outside edge rusher in high school in Virginia. He's a guy who was committed to Virginia Tech, reopened his commitment when they made the coaching change, and ended up committing to Pitt sort of mid-fall or late fall, and then signed and enrolled this month. I wondered on 247, we list him as a linebacker. I think we list him at being like 210. He's definitely bigger than 210. I asked him today how big he is. He said 235. He looks the part of being a really good pass rusher off the edge, big defensive end, the kind of guy you'd like, you're going to bulk him up even more from 235. You'd like to get him to 245, 255. But he looks like he might be able to be really good. Physically, he looks really imposing. So, yeah, check that video out right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'll get the video of the transfers, Jeremiah Warren and Elite Nairn, the defensive tackle transfers. We'll get that posted here. Probably not tonight. We'll get it posted in the morning, though. Paul Sebastian says, was a reason given for why the SMU game was switched to 2 from 3:45? No, I have no idea. The ACC changed 3 games. Virginia Tech at NC State was supposed to go at 1:30. Now it's at noon. The Pitt game was changed from 3:45 to 2 o'clock, and the Florida State Notre Dame game was changed from 4 o'clock. Actually, it stayed at 4 o'clock. They changed the network, ACC network, to the CW. No idea why. There's no I'm looking at the ACC's press release, and maybe they, they might have changed the time around. Yeah, this is probably what it was. So all 3 of these games that they changed are airing on the CW. So if they wanted to do that, they had to move some times around because they would have overlapped. So Virginia Tech, NC State was supposed to start at 1:30. Pitt was supposed to start at 3:45. Florida State, Notre Dame at 4 o'clock. But when they moved Florida State, Notre Dame to the CW, the other games had to move around time-wise. So now it's a full block of ACC games. You get the noon game on the CW, Virginia Tech, NC State, the SMU Pitt game at 2 o'clock, and then Florida State, Notre Dame at 4 o'clock. So you really go, like, as a lead into One Tree Hill, it's really going to be a dynamite day of basketball and family drama. Crazy Pitt Fan 14 says, how many more games does Pitt basketball win this season? This stretch is a gauntlet to the Notre Dame game. Well, last week in the 3-2-1 column on Friday, in my infinite wisdom, I predicted Pitt would win 2 of these next 5 games. I'm an idiot. I predicted they would win 2 of these next 5 games because it was fresh off the overtime win over Wake Forest. And I was all, intoxicated by that game in spite of all the evidence to the fact that it was a bit of a fluky win. But I predicted they would win 2 of the next 5. The next 5 being the last two games you just saw, at Clemson, at Virginia, where they failed to score 50 points. Where they scored 52 at Clemson, 47 at Virginia. And then coming up, you have SMU on Tuesday or on Saturday. Then you have Duke and at North Carolina. So I guess I'm still predicting they're going to win 2 of those 3. No, I mean, like, there's a possibility after you get past that gauntlet, Notre Dame, Stanford, Cal, Florida State, Syracuse, you could get a couple wins out of that stretch. Not very good teams in there either. So they could win a couple more. But I don't know if my prediction of winning 2 out of these 5 is going to be all that good. Pitt Fan H2P says, on the bright side of things, Bruce Brookins is looking like one of the best DBs in the ACC next year. I'm not going to make jokes. Obviously, you mean Cruz. Yeah, I think Cruz is going to be really good. You know, Cruz Brookins was 5th on the team in tackles and had 2 interceptions, even though he only played like 10 or 11 games. He does need to stay on the field. Avoids, I think he had a shoulder injury at one point. He had a concussion at another point, maybe at multiple points. You've got to, you've got to stay on the field, and he's an important player for them this season. And I think they'll be counting on him a lot because he's the veteran presence in the safety room. They don't have any other veterans. They have guys who've been around for a couple of years, but they don't have anybody else who has all that much playing experience in the safety room. Not like they had last year with Javon McIntyre and bringing in Kavir Baines-Marquez as a transfer who had played a lot at UC Davis. You know, this year it's Cruz and a bunch of inexperienced guys. And so he's going to have to be a steadying force back there and really lead the safeties and lead the defense. I think Cruz Brookins this year, he's got to be one of the leaders for this defense. I mean, I think when you look around leadership-wise, Braylon Lovelace obviously is a big-time leader for the defense. I think Cruz Brookins has to be one. You got some of those guys up front, Nick James, Sean Fitzsimmons, Jimmy Scott. I mean, they've been around. They've got some I don't know what you would call it, capital or cachet or something like that. And so those guys will, their voice should be able to be heard. Maybe Shadarian Harrison, he played a decent amount last year and he's an older guy. But I mean, Cruz Brookins has to be one of the leaders for this team in 2026 for the defense and maybe for the team as a whole. So, I'm very high on Cruz Brookins. I have been for a while, for sure. Pitt Fan H2P says, I'm feeling a W versus Duke. Capel's going to pull a rabbit out of a hat. What's that saying, man? From your ears to God's mouth, from your mouth to God's ears, or from your lips to God's ears, or something like that? That would be incredible. I don't know if I think it's going to happen. Although, like I said, I predicted 2 wins in the next 5. So, got to get one of them. PG Jean says, the offense is too stagnant. 0 to no cutting or off-ball movement. Watch Robert Morris, and that's the type of offense you need to run when talent is deficient. There's a longer conversation to be had, and it's a conversation that's been being had, a conversation we've been having for the better part of the last 8 years of whether Jeff Capel's approach to offensive basketball works when you don't have a roster like Duke and you don't have Blake Griffin. And I think there's a real conversation to be had there because I think it's more like, I think there's more to Pitt's offense than the sort of common criticism of, well, he just rolls the ball out there and lets them play. I think there's more to it than that. They don't always execute it well. It doesn't always look very good. And sometimes I think there's not much more to it than that. But I do think there is more to it than that. But a lot of it still relies on players making plays, which, yes, every basketball offense relies on players making plays. But to your point, when you have inferior talent, you need to find ways or see if there are ways to sort of scheme around that. How can you help create situations for your players to make baskets when they're not the most talented basket makers, right? And Jeff Capel playing at Duke, coaching at Duke, having Blake, did he? I hate making football analogies and Steeler analogies, but they always used to say, I remember they always used to say about Bill Cowher, or maybe Cowher said it himself, that the guys who make the best coaches, the superstars don't make the best coaches. The guys who make the best coaches are the guys who had to work for it, who had to earn it, who had to, and not that the superstars don't work for it, not the superstars don't earn it, but those guys, special teams guys, like Bill Cowher. And I wonder if you've spent your whole life, your whole like sort of adult and professional basketball career around like Duke basketball. I wonder if you have a full understanding of what you need to do to win when you're not at Duke basketball. I can remember his first couple of years, Capel's first couple of years, and people, would say like, well, I expected the recruiting to be better. And I remember sort of thinking to myself, I wonder if Capel is finding that it's a little bit different when you walk into the high school gym or the AAU tournament or whatever it is, and you don't have that, windbreaker that says Duke. You have the one that says Pitt. Like, I wonder if you get a different reception. I wonder if the vibe is a little bit different. I wonder if your, accessibility or your access is different. And, and I wonder if that applies on the court as well. And I think we have talked about this since Capel got hired, since those first couple of seasons. And it's something that, you continue to think about. I continue to think about and like, maybe if he was sitting right here and we said these things to him, maybe he'd punch me in the face and be like, you're an idiot. What are you talking about? And maybe so. But I do wonder, I mean, if you've always got the best players in America, you're coaching it differently and doing different things on the court and instructing it differently than if you have a bunch of guys who aren't quite at that level. And I know Coach K would probably tell you, Roy Williams would tell you he coaches the same way. It doesn't matter if it's a walk-on or a McDonald's All-American. I mean, sure, yeah, but there are different things you're going to ask those guys to do. And when you put the walk-on in a certain position on the court, you're going to ask him to do different things than you're going to ask that McDonald's All-American to do on the court. And at Pitt, the talent level he's getting and has gotten and will continue to get is going to be very different from what you would have at Duke. I think Jamie Dixon, for all that we complained about his offense and his boring offense and it wasn't exciting and he didn't just let his players play and maybe it hurt him with recruiting or whatever, like he understood how to get his guys into the system, how to get them to execute the system and get good results out of it. That, they're not going to be the most talented offensive team in the Big East. They weren't going to be more talented than UConn, But if they played their way and did what they wanted to do and did it the way the coaches coached them to do it, they could have success. And they had a lot of it. And I don't know. Like, I wonder sometimes. I wonder if that's a lesson that Jeff Capel learned along the way. I don't think that's the entirety of the issue, but I wonder. Voodoo IPA says, how many days until the spring game? Let's think of something potentially positive. Spring game, I'm actually going to be out of town like the third weekend of April, so it's probably that weekend. Probably right around there, 18th or something like that. Maybe it'll be the 11th. Maybe I'll get lucky, but it's probably going to be the 18th. Is my guess. Oof McGee says, where do you see Pitt finishing in the ACC? Do you see them finishing on the right side of the ACC bubble line? Well, pretty sure right now they're dead friggin' last. Let me look at the standings and just see where they're at. Well, the top 15 make it to the ACC tournament. Right now, Pitt is dead last. There are 5 teams in the ACC that have only won 2 conference games: Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Boston College, Notre Dame, and your University of Pittsburgh Panthers. Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Boston College, all 2-7. And Notre Dame and Pitt, both 2-8. So they've got some work to do to crawl out of this hole. They do play Notre Dame out of that group, so they have a chance to make, take a step there. And they'll play Syracuse, they'll play Stanford. Those are both teams with 6 losses each. Florida State as well. Florida State and Stanford are 3-6. Syracuse is 4-6. Cal is 4-5. And, even SMU is 4-5 in ACC play so far. So, look, it's not, this next stretch of like 3 games is really tough. Those final 5 games, though, those are teams that, by the record, are more or less right around Pitt's um, right around Pitt's kind of spot in the conference. So there are opportunities there. They could very well play themselves into the top 15, but they're gonna have to actually like win basketball games. All right, Jake Justison. I don't know if this is true or not, Jake. We're gonna take your word for it. He says the first Panther-Lair live show was February 4th, 2020, 6 years ago today. Is that true, Jake? Jake, are you telling me the truth? Maybe I need to scroll through here and just keep like scrolling all the way back. Well, I've already scrolled in live shows back to 2021. Wow, you're right. The Panther-Lair Show, February 4th, 2020. No kidding. 6 years ago tonight. There I am. I wonder what we talked about that night. 965 views, so that's not bad on the first night. Talk about Michigan State, recruiting hoops, and a lot more. I got a little slideshow going there. I got 2 slideshows going there, actually, as I look at the, I'm just kinda looking at it right now. It did it for an hour. I wonder if we ended up with anybody in the chat on that. Who knows? Wow. How about that? Good find, Jake. 6-year anniversary. We should have done a shot. If I had realized that, we would have done a shot tonight. The 6-year anniversary of the live Panther-Lair show or Panther-Lair live streams. Oh, you get all nostalgic here. No, nothing remarkable has ever really happened. The only thing remarkable that's ever happened during one of our live streams is we were live on the air the night Kenny Pickett announced he was coming back. So that December, right? So like 10 months after starting the live show, we were live the night Kenny Pickett announced he was coming back for one more season. And that's like the most remarkable thing that's ever happened in the middle of a live show. We've never even like lost power or anything. Probably lost the internet once or twice, but never even lost power. My dogs show up every now and then. Jim started being part of the show, so that was pretty cool. But otherwise, it's been a good 6 years. Thanks, Jake. Thanks for finding that. I could have found it myself, but thank you for finding it, and I'm glad you're telling me the truth. Let's see. PG Gene says if the Pitt players are missing 51% of their layups, is he not getting them in position to make them? I think there's two issues, right? Like I do think there are problems with the approach, with the X's and O's, but there's also problems with the Jimmies and Joes, right? Like this is a limited team offensively. Like I think they are limited in terms of their talent, and I think it comes through. You know what I mean? I think you see it. Like you don't accidentally score 47 points in a game. You know, like if you have any kind of offensive effectiveness or competency at all, you stumble your way into 55 points or 60 points. And this team, they just don't have it. And this is not like, again, I've said this a bunch of times that like we were saying this back over the summer. You know, we were talking about it on the message boards. We were talking about it here on the live on the morning pit and on the live shows and everything like that, that it just doesn't seem like a team with a lot of offensive firepower. You know, it doesn't seem like a team that was going to be able to score a lot. It felt like a team that would be pretty limited offensively, and they would have to win with defense and rebounding. And so I think, there was some belief, well, DeMarco Minor will improve the perimeter defense and Deshaun Jackson will be a better defensive force down low and all this stuff. And that just hasn't worked out. It just hasn't come together like that. They don't play defense well enough to make up for how poorly they play offense. And when you have that combination, where you're not very good on defense, you're not very good on offense, guess what? You're not a very good team. And so you get what you had here last week, which I don't think is the way that he wants it, but, well, He gets it. All right. We'll let Swim Boy finish us off here since I've been talking nonstop for the past 56 minutes or so. Says, thanks for the 6 years, Chris. Thank you guys. I appreciate everybody who tuned in at any point over the last 6 years. It's been interesting. Like I said, not much. Usually the live shows are just kind of fun to get together and hang out and talk a little Pitt sports. Certainly the post-game shows have been a lot of fun, but and then we added in the morning Pitt, got a little bit of daily talk, and we'll have more of that for you tomorrow. I think tomorrow we're going to talk about Corey Sanders, new defensive coordinator who's been here for a while. What I think are some of the most important things he needs to focus on and do and, work on in his first year as defensive coordinator for the Panthers. So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, we'll have the morning Pitt mailbag on Friday. Go to the message boards at Panther-Lair.com and you can post your question in the mailbag and we'll answer as many as we can. But in the meantime, thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. Thanks for watching for 6 years. It's been a lot of fun. Like this video, subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Enjoy your Wednesday night, and we will catch up with you tomorrow for the morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.